Hello students, welcome to EPG Patashala. My name is Dr. K.R. Ramamohan, Associate Professor at Department of Anthropology, Sikkim University. Today we are going to talk about a module on structural functionalism from the paper Theories and Methods in Social and Cultural Anthropology. Now, let us see what are the learning outcomes of this module. To develop an understanding about structural functionalism, to know about different schools of thought of structural functionalism, to know the contribution of different pioneers of this concept. Lastly, to critically analyze the concept. Now, what is structural functionalism? There are two aspects, put it simply. One is structure, the other one is functional. So together it is called structural functionalism, which has been improvised by Radcliffe Brown. Earlier functionalism was being taught or being given by Malinowski. So Radcliffe Brown basically took further the concept, Malinowski's concept of functionalism, and he elaborated to just it is not only the functions but there is a larger structure which gives more understanding of cultures in a given society. So now this is basically, we can combine it is also as a sociological theory that attempts to explain why society or societies functions the way it does by focusing on the relationship between various social institutions that make up a society. For example, what are the various social institutions? Family, marriage, religion, kinship, political organization, economy, all these things are different social institutions. And with these social institutions, how there is some kind of a relationship between themselves and to the individual members that makes up a society as a whole. Now, as I said before, that the whole structural functionalism has taken from the concept of Bronislaw Malinowski's concept on functionalism. Functionalism basically gave more focused attention on the existing societies, how a particular society is functioning, and what are the different elements contribute to the overall functioning of a society. Malinowski's functionalism is based on the theory of need, or what we call instrumental needs, that every individual has certain needs, and how society satisfies or given culture satisfies these individual needs through various social institutions. For example, one has to reproduce. So how this reproduction takes place? It is through marriage, and this marriage is a sanctified social institution. So sexual needs or reproductive needs are being satisfied through a social institution called marriage, and these identity issues are all taken into concept of family, where husband-wife relationship, in that sense, like everything, biological needs, shelter, all these basic human needs which are being satisfied by different social institutions through these various mechanisms. So in that sense, Malinowski's theory is considered to be as a theory of needs. Now again, Malinowski has given more rigorous training and approach to what we call the scientific methodology in understanding these needs. If you look into other theoretical perspectives like evolutionism and other schools of thought, which did not give much scientific methodology to understanding of how culture operates, but it is with Malinowski that he has given new ways of understanding culture through scientific methodology. Now, who are the leading or the prominent British school of structural functionalists? We can name them as Radcliffe Brown, Asaph Nadal, Edmund Leach, Raymond Firth, Mayer Fortis and Ivan Spitzer. These all together they can lump into, says that these are structural functionalists, where they try to identify that societies or cultures can be understood from this perspective of structural functionalism. Now, what are the structural features of social life which is given by Radcliffe Brown? Radcliffe Brown says that one has to see that there is an existence of social group, and this social group basically has an internal structure. No social group is without a structure. So what is this structure? This structure is nothing but arrangement into social classes. For example, we can say there are gender relations between men and women, or there could be another classes between the groups, which makes up a larger social structure. Apart from social structure, there are individual social distinctions. For example, like a leader, like a head of the family, and other things that every individual have certain social distinctions among themselves. And these persons are arranged in a dyadic relationship. For example, in a family, there is a dyadic relationship between wife and husband, and there is a dyadic relationship between brother and sister. There is a dyadic relationship between cousins. There is a dyadic relationship between relatives. So all these relationships makes together the larger structural whole. In that sense, Radcliffe Brown is more giving importance to what we call that people are in relation to each other, and that why even if he tries to say that what is structure according to them, Radcliffe Brown clearly says that social structure is nothing but the existing social relations of a society. That is the basic definition given by Radcliffe Brown. So to understand a society, he told to all the anthropology students that first see how people are related together, what kind of relationship they are in, and how these interaction is going on between groups and persons. So a society is basically more of consist with groups, and within these groups people have relations among themselves, and this is how they give the larger structural whole, where Radcliffe Brown says that within this it is not only just a functional, but these functions should be done properly and it should be meaningful. It needs a structure to bring, hence it is called a structural functionalism. Now, what is taking further, how Brown has further elaborated the structural functional? He says that these things can be put it as some kind of a law, but it is not completely a scientific law, that we can see generalizations of common opinion. So how every individual in the society has common opinions about how to organize themselves. There are no individual differences. That is how it makes in a structural whole. Like all members have agreed upon that we should live together. We have these kinds of rules. We have these kinds of arrangements. In that way, we can see there is a common opinion about all the generalizations which are given at a specific culture in a specific time. These generalizations have been carefully demonstrated by how a systematic examination of evidence given by complete observations of a given society. So to understand this generalization, one has to see systematically how these generalizations have come out, how people made these generalizations, and this is how what he calls as a quote unquote scientific. Scientific in a sense that science or scientific method, it is nothing but careful examination. It is not based on conjecture. So in that sense, he says that the functional aspects should be seen systematically and in a scientific way. Now, again, another anthropologist, S.F. Nadel, has come out with a proposition says that structural features of a society or structural functionalist features of society is that a society is nothing but a group of people. So any group of people who are organized themselves can we say that is society. And this group of people have institutionalized rules where each member interact with each other. Now, there is a set of rules, and within these rules, every individual is bound to act. For example, in a marriage or in a family, family dictates that there are set of rules, or religion dictates there are set of rules, and within this frame, governance, that we people interact with one another. And this institutionalized pattern also gives us expression for their interaction. So how do they express? Based upon the rules given, and this is how they interact with each other. Now, uh, another anthropologist, Edmund Leach, has given that functionalism, basically structural functionalism, becomes dynamic and diachronic. So what does he mean by both dynamic and diachronic? So he also stress upon, says that it is emergent in a sense that dynamic means which is happening at the situational level. And Leach also proposes to say that one has to see the historical process also, how a particular system has evolved. When he is studying the political aspects of ethnographic studies on communities, he also not only interested in the exact situation that is happening at that particular point, but is also interested in a more diachronic way, that what happens and what were the historical trajectory for these kinds of diachronic things. Now, there are two sociologists who supported this structural functionalism. They are basically social. One is Talcott Parsons and Robert K. Merton. Both these authors are of opinion that action is more important. So they are called action theorists. So how action means, in a sense, that is nothing but interaction. So if you prolong these two words, action and interaction, and how people interact with each other, and within these actions are embedded within the rules of a particular given society and culture. So these two sociologists are in complete favor of that structure of action, says that action makes people more meaningful in a given group. Now Parsons says that he wants to generate a grand theory of society, that all societies must have these kind of principles. Though it is little ambitious in his agenda, but he says that all societies have these four kinds of social structure which is being made up of this thing. For example, he says that universalistic social values. So what are these universalistic social values? For example, family and relationships. So this has become universal. So wherever we go, we see a family as a social unit which has certain value system, like what is the role of a father, what is the role of a wife, what is the role of children. So it is not devoid of any particular, we see family everywhere. Now comes, he says that another particular type is called particularist social values, in a sense that these are basically some kind of norms, some kind of mores, some kind of value systems in a given culture. So that could be unique to that culture. It may not be same with another culture. Why it happens? It must have evolved to suit to the needs of that particular culture. It could be an ideology, it could be a religious value system, it could be some morality issues, it could be of anything which is unique to that particular society and to that particular culture, what Parsons believes. So that makes the society to function well, and in that sense he coins this as particularist social values. The other one is achieved social value. Every society makes some people to come to certain stages in life, like becoming a leader, becoming a president, or becoming some kind of a recognition. That means individuals achieve these kinds of values to themselves. So becoming a leader or becoming a head or a chief brings a value to them, and that individuals have the capacity to achieve those values. So this also becomes in democratic setups that one can become anything. It is not that it is said that you have to be like this only. So we have a process where anyone can become anything. In that societies it becomes achieved social values. The last one, he says that ascribed social values. So what is this ascribed? Ascribed social values basically are institutionalized. If one had, then it is followed to another one in the same family or in the same clan or anything. It is naturally given to them. we can see in the kingdoms and all, automatically if the chief dies, the other one will become. There is nothing like achievement, but it is ascribed to them in a royalty, in kings and kingdoms and all these societies where you can see by default people get these ascribed social values. Another sociologist is Robert K. Merton, has given two types of functions. One is the manifest functions and the other one is latent function. So all societies, individuals function at these two levels. Let us see what is manifest. Manifest means which comes out, which has put in action, which can be measured to a certain extent. So it is a manifest function, according to Merton, is a social pattern that can come or trigger or recognized as an intended consequence. Like we do, individuals in the cultures do many things like reproduction, economy, which gives these some kind of a product based. In that sense, he says that every culture has these two aspects at a functional level, what he calls manifest and latent function, which basically mean to bring some kind of a consequence. Marriage is basically some kind of a things that which gives you some consequence. Family is basically means, and again we see the latent functions. This pattern which may not be recognized, which is done by the individuals, but which is not recognized, in a sense that religion, a faith, which has been latent, which is some kind of a structure which is operating, which may not be seen in reality, but it is mostly an individualistic kind of a thing. So in these two senses, Merton gives two typologies of what we call manifest functions and latent functions. Now, there are two more thinkers, profound thinkers, which have influenced the structural functionalism school, is basically Emile Durkheim and Levi-Strauss. Emile Durkheim, basically a sociologist, both comes under French school of understanding, Durkheim and Levi-Strauss, which propounded, says that society or culture can be understood by collecting social facts. Anything which is seen or anything which is happening in reality is considered to be a social fact. Durkheim proposed that society could be studied like how the nature can be studied, how physics can be studied, how chemistry can be studied. On the same lines, Durkheim is interested to study that society is no different to the natural phenomena. And he says that sociology should be a natural science of society. So he took the perspective of positivism. Positivism based on completely scientific methodology. The scientific methodology starts with observation, experimentation, verification, generalization, and universality. How physics, chemistry, mathematics can be studied can be applied to even sociology. And this positivist approach has influenced Radcliffe Brown to study how a society functions. Like the previous thinkers of as of Nadal, Leach, Parsons, Merton are more towards this positivist way of understanding that societies need to be understood, need to be studied from a perspective of scientific rigor or scientific spirit of understanding. And for that matter, Durkheim wanted to study the concept of suicide. Though suicide is a very personal act, but which has its roots with the structural aspects of the society. And he tells that an individual act could be triggered with the functioning of the society. Durkheim is also interested on the question of how certain societies maintain internal stability and survive over time. In a sense that why certain societies are coherent and why certain societies are incoherent and why certain societies are very stable. What were the mechanisms behind this stability of sustaining for a longer period of times? What makes them, what is the social control mechanism applied by a society over its individuals to take them for a longer period in a sustainable way? So in a sense that he says that this is all super organic. There is some kind of unity among themselves which makes these societies as a whole and to go on with these kinds of things. So Durkheim proposes this concept called solidarity. Mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity. In a sense that how certain parts are interlinked together and how they are helping each other. One institution with another institution, one institution with another institution, though they may not be related to each other, like a body. Though the parts of the body are not related to each other, like legs and hands are not related to each other, but everything is helping in a sense. So this organic view of biology has been applied to the society. How an organ or an organism survives by integrating all the parts of the body. A society is also been survived and it's been on the longer run because every part is helping the other parts of the body. And in a sense that how individuals are also helping each other. Though there is an individualistic feeling one has to live, but in a sense that we are contributing to the other individuals, and that is how the society is been in an organic whole. Now, let us also understand one French structuralist who is called Lévi-Strauss, which is also he has also been influenced by the structural functional aspects of a society. So Lévi-Strauss proposed structuralism, which is one part of structural functionalism, to unravel how a society can be understood with a larger structure. Lévi-Strauss of the opinion says that there is some kind of an unconscious element which operates of all the human beings, and these structural aspects one has to decipher, one has to discover what are the models built upon these kind of social structure. If we know this, how people govern themselves at an unconscious level, that gives real clues to human mind or the savage mind. Taking the cultural evolution, how the thought process might have evolved, Lévi-Strauss was more important, was concerned that how when historically the societies are not related to each other, why certain social institutions exist. For example, incest. Incest taboo is there in most primitive society, the most advanced society. when there was no historical connection between these two societies. For example, one society in one small primitive society, quote unquote primitive society from Australia, or another part in Africa, when these two societies are not historically related, there was incest taboo operating there. Here also incest taboo. So why this incest taboo has come when there is no historical relation? So that means there is, at a structural level, societies are being arranged in such a way that there should be some kind of a unity between all these social phenomena. Now, Levi-Strauss has also given a new innovative understanding to reconceptualize the whole social phenomenon and social reality. How does this social reality has been constructed? The social reality has been constructed through the structures which are beyond the human beings, which are unseen. And the anthropologist has to discover these social structures. And within this social structure, all the other social institutions are embedded. And Levi-Strauss has taken the example of language, and how language has a pattern, how language has been structured, like human thought process is also been structured on the linguistic lines. Levi-Strauss was also impressed at how myths were constructed. What are the structural aspects of the myth construction? Strauss was also interested in how the kinship systems were arranged, how people relate to each other, how people have categories of these systems, and how cultures have come out with these concepts of totems, why people give meaning symbolically to objects. And within this process, Levi-Strauss wants to understand the whole civilization process, taking a structure from a linguistic, how languages are being ordered in terms of the structures operating a language. So in that sense, he gave us a new understanding that these cultures are being operating at a structural level, and we need to see and decipher how the models are being built to understand social realities. Levi-Strauss also further gave a understanding that all kinds of structures basically go on with the dichotomies. He gives examples of wet and dry, light and darkness, men and women. Now, why these categories are being spill over to even religion, religious practices, political organizations, kinship relationships, myths? If we understand how people organize these social attributes at a dichotomous level, that gives us clues to human mind. So Levi-Straussian approach is basically at a deeper levels of unconscious mind of, or the psyche of the primitive mind. How the primitive man has conceptualized the whole social reality, which today we call it as a civilization. How what was the trajectory of this whole thinking process in terms of arranging, in terms of rearranging, in terms of governing themselves at individual to societal level. So in that sense, we can say that structural functionalism has, not only with Radcliffe Brown, but there are various thinkers which come forward and they have with their ethnographic studies have given understanding that at one level, Malinowski has given the functional aspects that each and every social institution has a role to play, and this social institution tries to satisfy the individual needs, which makes us a coherent. So his theory is called a theory of needs, which are very instrumental, which makes the things. But Radcliffe Brown, taking the cues from a functionalist aspect of Malinowski, who has also said that in order to maintain the functions of these social institutions, a structure to operate all these functions. In that sense, he has clearly defined what is function and what is structure. So that's why he has combined the whole concept of structural functionisms, that both the structural features are in operation to see that individuals should function properly as a unit whole for the overall maintenance of the societies. And he's also come out with says that why certain societies have certain value systems and why some other societies have certain value systems. Perhaps that could be a logic behind that every society is internally logically framed according to the needs of a given culture in a given specific geographical location, and for that it needs a structural thing to combine these activities, to arrange these activities for a larger whole. In that sense, one can see a continuous process of long-term sustainability with all the societies across the world. To summarize the whole concept of structural functionalism, Radcliffe Brown has been influenced by functionalism by Malinowski, which he has taken further, saying that cultures do not need only studied at a functional level, but it has to be seen at a larger contextual theoretical understanding at a structural level also. In that sense, it is called structural functionalism. His famous book is Structure and Function in a Primitive Society, a Mother's Brother in Africa. In that sense, Radcliffe Brown says that how a society, though it looks very primitive, though it looks very simple societies, how do they organize themselves? At what level the functional aspects has to be studied. In that sense, how a mother's brother is important in deciding the residence after the marriage, in deciding the marriage rules, in deciding the descent rules. Not only at a marriage level, at a family level, we should also see various other social institutions are being governed by various functions at one level, and these functions together, which gives the larger whole, that is the structure. So hence, Radcliffe Brown says that it is not suffice to study only the functional aspects of the society. So all his ethnographic studies, which specifically clearly says that societies operate at these two levels which are unseen, that we need to discover these laws, what we call quote unquote laws, scientific laws. So he has his predecessors right from Durkheim, from French tradition. He has been also influenced by Leach. He has been influenced, and there are other structural functionalists who have immensely contributed the whole concept of structural functionalism.